everyone. Welcome to the last video that I'm going to record in this sitting. Essentially, what we're going to do is take what we did in the last two videos and add a third FortiGate. So that is our second FortiGate. That is our first goal here. And you notice at this point you essentially need to start looking at a topology map. So essentially what we did in the last video was take this NAT cloud and tie it into port 1 of our local FortiGate. And then we told the FortiGate just to go out through DHCP to get an internet connection. And then we configured on port 2 this Ubuntu machine right here. And then we successfully got to the internet after we wrote the firewall rule. So, but essentially, let's say that we want to add another FortiGate over here. So this will be our remote FortiGates. And let's say that we want to go ahead and add in a router like we had in class. So this way we can practice like VPN connections between the two FortiGates themselves. And then also, maybe test some possible, just different options. So what we're going to do here is we are going to first open up the remote FortiGate. We're going to import that in. So we'll do our second FortiGate, and then we have to set up these LANs. So you guys saw how I set up LAN 1 before, but now we're going to have to set up a LAN 1, a LAN 2, a LAN 3, and a LAN 4. So remember, each time in this virtual environment, when you need a switch, we have to have a LAN segment. So that's another option that we're going to have to do. And then I have installed a CentOS box and also a Windows 7 box here for these additional machines, and they have not been touched. So just to kind of show you guys that, I have Ubuntu, not Ubuntu, I have CentOS wrapping up its installation here, and then here is the Windows 7 machine that is just waiting for us to tie it to a FortiGate. So right now it's getting internet connectivity because it's being NATed out my local interface there. So why don't we go ahead and bring in that second FortiGate. So I'm going to go ahead and hit File, and I'm going to Open. And I was mentioning how it's nice to keep that downloaded image somewhere available, so in case you want to bring in a second FortiGate, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to take the files that we downloaded in video 1, and we're simply going to bring them in again. This time we're going to call it Remotes FortiGate. Alright, and it will bring in a second FortiGate once we accept the license agreement here, with all of its interfaces in bridge mode, and the second you turn it on, once again you get 15 days to use it, which is kind of nice. So alright, so there we go. Excellent. Now at this point, what I would start doing is, before I even turn this thing on, I'm going to jump back to my topology. I'm going to say, okay, so LAN 2, I need a LAN 4, so that's going to be port 1 and port 2. So I'm going to come back to my virtual machine, and I'm going to say, okay, this interface right here, let me just double click that, should pop it up right here, is going to use LAN segment. I'll add in a new one. So this is going to be using LAN 2. And while I'm here, I might as well just add all 3 of them, of the new ones. So this is essentially giving us 4 virtual switches to plug machines into. So, and we're going to say that that first one is going to be LAN segment 2, and then the second one here is going to be LAN segment 4. There we go. And I'm going to hit OK. So as you can see, we're now on the correct LAN segments there. I'm also going to hop over to my local FortiGate configuration settings, and I'm going to right click and hit Settings, and I'm going to stick those on the correct LAN segments. So here we go. So instead of NAT, that's going to become LAN segment 1, and instead of LAN segment 1, that's going to become LAN segment 3. So this is just essentially putting them on the right switch networks. So going back to my topology, this is why we did so. So port 1 between that and the Linux box here is going to be LAN segment 1, and then between the other FortiGates, this is going to be LAN segment 2. LAN segment 4 is going to be our remote internal network, and LAN segment 3 is going to be our local internal network. So now that we have those all on the right switched areas, alright, we should be good to go there. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on my remote FortiGate. I'm going to go to my Windows 7 machine now. I'm going to right click this bad boy, go to settings. I might as well set that into its correct LAN segment, which will be 4, because it's going to attach directly to the remote FortiGate. And then also this Ubuntu box here, I'm just going to go into settings and stick that in LAN segment 3 instead of 1. There we go. Just so I can have them matching this topology right here. Alright, now my Ubuntu box was bacon earlier, so let me go over to my let's see here, my Linux router. You see it's just taking a little bit longer, so why don't we kill some time by turning on this remote FortiGate, which we have, and configuring each side. So I'm going to log in as admin. Alright, I'm going to do a git sys stat, just like for the local FortiGate. And as you can see, we have a valid license, so it's going to be valid for 15 days, which is very nice, right? I also need that formatting hard drive for my log files formatted too, which I mentioned earlier. You know, while we're killing time, why don't we get that out of the way? A couple of things out of the way. For starters, I'm going to do a config sys global, and I'm going to set the host name to remote FortiGate, so that way I don't get confused in which FortiGate I'm in. You can do that through the GUI, and then also I'm going to do an exe format log disk and hit OK. And this will format that second disk so we can start collecting log files on it, so we can start doing some reporting, and that will actually go down. So I can actually do that for my local FortiGate too while we're sitting here and killing some time. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to go to admin. Alright, I'm going to do a config sys global, and I'm going to set my host name to local FortiGate. Alright, so that way I know which FortiGate I'm in. And then also I'll do an exe format log disk, so that way we can get some log files if we need to. So, alright, so this is still installing, so let's go ahead and maybe set up the Windows 7 machine. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to open up my network and sharing settings, and I'm going to check my topology real quick to see where I wanted to stick that guy. So okay, so it looks like it's going to have the default gateway of 10.0.2.1 on port 2 of the FortiGate, and then I'm just going to statically assign it a 10.0.2.10. So let's do it. Here we go. I'm going to go to local area connection. I'm going to hit my properties. I'm going to IP4. I'm going to go to properties there, and I'm going to manually type in the IP address. Oops. There we go. 10.0.2.10 with the 255.255.255.0 and 10.0.2.1 as its default gateway, and I'll just borrow Google's DNS once we set up those settings there. So my Windows 7 machine is actually all set. All I need is for that remote FortiGate to finish booting, which it is, and I can point to that port 2 so I can start using the GUI. So why don't we do that next? So we'll do a config sys interface, right? We're going to edit port 2. We're going to set the IP address for 10.0.2.1 with the /24, and we're going to set an allow access to HTTP, HTTPS, ping, and also maybe some SSH and telnet. Alright, if I can spell telnet correctly. There we go. Excellent. So, with that being said, I should now be able to go to that Windows 7 machine and access the FortiGates GUI if I did everything correctly. Alright, so here we go. 10.0.2.1 should get an error. Oh, look at that. A little outdated, right, of its IE, but that's okay. I'll probably have to update to a better version of Chrome here. But I just wanted to see that I could talk to that FortiGate, and it looks like I can. So the GUI just looks a little messed up because we have not updated our machine there. So, but if I go to a console port, here we go, or a command prompt, I should be able to ping out that gateway just to confirm everything is working on that side. So, and I was able to do so because remember, we went ahead and we configured the right LAN settings, right? And we put them on the same interfaces. So at least that side is okay. Alright? And same thing is true over here. I should be able to reach this local FortiGate because we changed this to LAN 3 and nothing IP-wise changed there. So I do have to go on my local FortiGate though and point to port 2 to use LAN 3 and not LAN 1. So why don't we go ahead and do that while we're waiting. I will go over to my local FortiGates. I'll hit my settings. If I haven't already done this, I'm starting to have a brain fart. Here we go. And I'm just going to double confirm that. So LAN 3, LAN 1, perfect. So I did do that earlier. So now I should still be able to access the GUI here without a problem. Oh, or maybe not. Dun dun dun. Let's take a look here. Local. Let me close this down. Here we go. Alright. Those settings should not have changed. And once again, I'm just kind of killing time for this thing to finish rebooting. So, alright. And it looks like it has not come up yet since my log files. So that is fine. That is not unnormal because of the amount of resources my local machine has here. I'm not doing this on a big server. I'm just doing this on my personal laptop. So I'm actually going to hit pause on the video right here and just wait for this machine to start booting and also for my remote machine to come back to life, and then we'll go forward there. So I'm just going to hit pause and through the magic of video recording come back once everything is done installing. Alright guys, through the power of recording the video, my local FortiGate had finished rebooting, and also I went ahead and went to that Windows 7 machine and installed Chrome on it by switching that interface back into NAT mode briefly, just so I could update the web browser so I could get into the remote FortiGate. So let's go ahead and test out the remote FortiGate. I'm going to log in as admin, and then as you can see, I am there. So I can access the GUI on the remote side and also from the Ubuntu side. The only reason why it failed before is because it hadn't done booting the local FortiGates when I formatted its log files. So here we go. So we have two FortiGates now attached to two separate hosts. We just have nothing in the middle that's combining them. So to go back to this little Visio diagram that I drew, we have essentially connected this side and this side of the FortiGates, and we have not done the part in the middle. So that's where the Linux machine comes into, and obviously it's a little bit outside of the scope here of how to install like a Linux distro, but I'm pretty sure you guys know how to use CentOS or use Ubuntu. I just picked CentOS here, and we use that one in class too because it's really easy to throw up an Apache server if you need it, or an email server if you need it, or FTP server if you need it to try out those different features. So this has been installed, but I have not turned it on, and as you can see we have a single interface here that's called NAT. Now, going back to my diagram, we need two interfaces, two additional interfaces, and one's going to be attached to LAN 1, and the other one's going to be attached to LAN 2. So I'm going to go back to my hypervisor here. I'm going to go to Settings, and let's go ahead and add a couple of NIC cards. So I'm going to go to my network adapter, I'm going to hit Add, and I'm going to add network adapter, I'm going to hit Next, I'm going to hit Finish, and this new network adapter I'm going to stick on LAN 1, so to match up with this guy right here. Alright, and now I'm going to go back and I'm going to add my second card. Alright, here we go. Hit Finish and put this on LAN segment 2. LAN segment 2. There we go. And hit OK. So we have essentially LAN segment 1, LAN segment 2, just like in our diagram. So we'll throw some IP addresses on there. And let's go ahead and turn on that Linux machine. Now this CentOS box will take a second to load up. So in the meantime, I'm going to go over here, and I have no idea why that timed out. The script on that side. If you guys notice that little hiccup there. So, alright. Come on, you can do it. It's thinking really hard. Anyways, alright, that's what I wanted. I'm going to go ahead and configure, while that Ubuntu machine is booting, I'm going to go ahead and configure port 1 to use 10.200.1.1 instead of the DHCP that we did before. And then I'm going to come over to this side and do it to the remote FortiGate also. So, alright, here we go. I'll hit Remind Me Later. I'm going to go to my network. I'm going to go to Interfaces. And I'm going to put in that interface. And I apologize if this is slow. Once again, I am using my personal laptop, which is about 6 years old. So it's just a little bit slow. So it's thinking. I can even try to multitask here. Maybe I'll hop over to the remote side and look at that interface. Alright, at least get that thinking. Anyways. If you guys want to donate me a laptop that actually has some resources here, and I'm kidding, of course. Alright, so they're thinking real hard, and that's just because I'm also turning on this bad boy Linux CentOS box, which is going to take up quite a bit of resources during the boot process. Once this is done booting though, all of these virtual machines should even out with their resources, so they shouldn't be so taxing here. Oh, looks like my remote FortiGate is up. How about this guy over here? It's still trying to look at the interfaces. Come on, you can do it, buddy. I guess we can do the remote side first, so because we have that up. So as you can see here, port 1 has no IP addresses, and if I go back to my Visio diagram, this side is going to get a 10.200.2.1 onto port 1, and then the opposite is going to be 10.200.2.254. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to double click inside the interface. And normally we wouldn't have those management IP addresses on the WAN side, but because this is a controlled environment, I'm actually going to keep those interfaces in there so I can go to my Linux box and get to the FortiGate's web GUI. So I'm going to call this WAN, and then I'm going to assign an IP address of 10.200.2.1 with a /24. Alright. And that should actually be it. That should be it. So I'm going to hit OK. And that will take just a second to think. Alright. And then also, because we are doing this statically, don't forget you have to go over to your static routes and put in the default route to leave. So I'm going to say create new. Alright, so we're going to do the quad 0. This is going to be out port 1, and the gateway or next hop is going to be that Linux router once we get it up and going. So it'll be 200.2.254. Alright. This way it knows how to leave the remote FortiGates. In fact, while we're here, why don't we just wrap up the remote FortiGate side by doing a policy. So we'll go to policy and objects for basic internet access. So once we get this rolling, we can test it right away. So IP4 policy, and we'll just create a simple internet access policy to allow traffic through it to access the internet. Now normally you'd want to be a little more granular than this, but obviously we're just setting up a little test lab here. So the ingress is going to be that port 2. The egress is going to be the ports 1. And I'll just kind of do the all in all here to be lazy. Alright, looks like I tried clicking it too fast. There we go. Services, sure, we'll do all. There we are. Alright, so the second that Linux box is up, my Windows 7 machine should get internet access. So let's go over to the Ubuntu side. Wow, look at that, finally loaded up. So let's double click the port 1 here. I'm going to go back to my drawing. So as you can see, this one's going to be 10.200.1.1, and the opposite side of that connection is going to be the 10.200.1.254. This we have not configured yet. We will get there in just a moment. So let me hop back here. I'll call this WAN while I'm in here. It's good to label those interfaces. And we're not doing DHCP anymore. We are manually doing it. So 10.200.1.1 with a /24. Alright. And then because we are not doing DHCP, we are going to have to go to our static routes and tell the FortiGate how to leave this network. So, alright, so here we go. And from the second video, we already have a firewall policy for our internet traffic. So nothing will happen though until we set up that Linux router. So we're going to say, if you don't know where you're going, leave off of port 1, and the next hop is going to be 10.200.1.254. We're going to hit OK. Alright, so at this point, and I'll just kind of prove here, we'll go to policy and objects and kind of see that our IP4 policy, alright, should have that internet access already defined that we did in a previous slide, so, or a previous video. So there we go. Alright, so at this point, from here down and from here down, we have configured. The last thing we need to do is to set up that Linux box. So, and that can be a little bit more tricky. So just bear with me here, but I'm going to go to my Linux router. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and log in. This is a brand new install. So password. Alright. And I'm going to let that load up here shortly. Just take 2 seconds. Alright. Okay, and I'll probably cut out some of this loading time so you guys don't have to sit here and watch it load on my super slow computer here. So here we go. So here is the Linux box. It's a little bit newer than the version that we used in class, but it's essentially the same build, and this thing will be an Apache server if you want to do a little web hosting to try it out with, so on and so forth. It's quite friendly. So but where we're going to want to go is up here to our network connections. Let's drop this down, and as you can see, we have one that's already connected. Now that is going to be our NAT. So this is coming from my internal network, and it's natting my internal interface so we can get out to the internet. Now these two right here, they don't know what to do with them because they don't have IP addresses. Alright, so let's just start with the first one here. Let's go to wired settings. And you're probably asking yourself, okay, how do I know which connection is which, right? Well, what I want you guys to see here is we have MAC addresses. So I'm going to just take this first connection here, all right? I'm going to look at the MAC address, so A945, okay, looks good. So I'm going to come over to my Linux router and go to settings real briefly, and you only have to do this once, obviously, to know which NIC belongs to what LAN segment. So I'm going to go over here to the second adapter. I'm going to go to advanced, and I have a A945. So I know that this belongs to LAN segment 1, which, going back to my diagram, I know connects with the local FortiGate. So this one needs an IP address of 10.200.1.254. So I am going to come here to my settings. Alright, there we go. And I'm going to go to IP4, and I am not going to do automatic, I'm going to do manual, and the address is going to be 10.200.1.254, and with a mask of 255.255.255.0. And for right now, we're going to leave this gateway alone, and I'll show you why in just a moment, okay? But I'm going to hit OK or apply. Alright, so that should be set there, okay? Let's go over here, and we know that this remaining one is going to be our remote FortiGate. So I'm just going to pop over here real quick. So this one needs an IP address of 10.200.2.254. So, alright, let's go here, and I'm going to go to my settings. Okay, I'm going to go to 4, and I am going to turn off DHCP, and this one's going to be 10.200.2.254. Alright, and then stick the mask 255.255.255.0, and I'm going to hit apply. Alright, looks good. So as you can see, we have 3 connections. Alright, so the one that was NATed, and the one that was supposed to belong on the local side, and then the remote FortiGate side. And everything looks okay there. So I'm going to do a real quick test by opening up a terminal and just trying to ping both of the FortiGates. So here we go. Let's go ahead and ping 10.200.1.1. So as you can see, I have a response from my local FortiGate. So that side is working. Wonderful. And now I'm going to ping the other side, 2.1. Hey, look at that. So we have both of the FortiGates talking. So we can reach out essentially from this side out and this side out. Now there's one more thing that you have to do to get this Linux box to actually act as a router. So if you're not familiar with Linux, this part can be a little bit confusing, but I promise you there's plenty of guides to see how to do this. But essentially we have to forward IP packets. So I'm going to go to my File Explorer here, and then I am going to, let's see if I can remember how to do this. I go to computer, here we go. So if I go to computer, it takes me to the root, and then I'm going to go to the etc folder. Alright, take a second to load that up, but I'm looking for a syscontrol config file. So I'm going to scroll down, and this is going to depend on what version of Linux you want to use it for, but essentially we're just going to tell it to pass IP packets around when they receive them. So here we go. Alright, somewhere here, and there she is, the syscontrol config file. So I'm going to go ahead and double click this bad boy and open it up, and I should be able to just get this little here. Now if it says read only mode, alright, that can be a problem. So we'll probably want to edit these things through the terminal by using something like, here, let's see if I can't just do it manually here. I'm going to close this and try to go to properties and try not to have this thing as a read only. So, alright. You are not the owner. Oh, see, the disadvantages of not logging in as a root. So, that's no big deal. I'll just open up the terminal. Alright, so there we go. And now I am in localhost etc, but now I'm going to do a super user do, and I'm going to just use, I don't know, Nano, which is a editing application here, and I'll do syscontrol.config. Alright, so my password is going to be password to get in there. And Devin is not a part of the super user do file. Oh, cute. So the problem here is that I use the automated system to get my files to get my Linux box to automatically install. So I'm going to hit pause here and change that just one moment. Alright guys, sorry about that. I just had to log out as Devin and log in as root. So now that I am the root, I can go ahead and make changes to this configuration file. So, but here I go. I'm going to put in a net.ipv4 dot IPv nope, I lied. IP underscore forward equals 1. And this essentially says that it can act as a router. So it can pick up IP addresses from other subnets and place them on subnets that it knows. So there we go. I'll go ahead and hit save. Alright. And then to force this config file to load again, I'm going to open up a terminal. Alright. And by the way, once again, you're going to want to look up how to do this depending on what flavor of Linux that you're going to be using. So just type in Ubuntu, how to make me a router kind of settings. That's how I figured this out. But it's going to be a sys ctl minus p. Alright. And then I'm just going to do a slash etc slash syscontrol.config conf. There we go. Alright. And that will go ahead and reload the configuration file. So, and now the next thing I want to do is essentially allow it to act as a NAT router. So if anything needs to go out to the internet, it will go ahead and NAT out that ETH0 port. So I'll just confirm this by doing an ifconfig just to show you guys that my my network that has been rooted is going to be this guy right here. Alright, and I can tell because it is my internal NATed environment. So I'm actually going to copy that right there so I can tell it which interface to push down. But it's going to be IP tables is going to do that. So IP tables -f, that will flush the IP tables, and then I'm going to also flush any kind of natting rules that it might have picked up during the installation. So there we go. And now I'm going to tell it to NAT out that interface. So I'll say IP tables nt NAT a post routing. Alright. Do a -o. And then that's the out. So I'm going to right click now and hit paste, which will be the interface that I was using for my internet connection. Alright. Then -j, and then also this masquerade command right here. Alright, so there we go. Now I'm going to type in an IP tables -t nat -l to do a double check to make sure that they will be natted correctly. So here we go. Masquerade all anywhere, destination anywhere of the internet connection here. So let's see if we can get out to the internet now. So I'm just going to go to google.com, and if it resolves it, then I know that Linux machine is passing along the IP addresses, which, as you guys can see, it is. So Google is fun. Alright, so there you go. Alright, so those couple of steps there that we just did essentially allowed that middle device, the Linux router, to pick up packets from one address that it knew and push it out the other, and then also that IP tables NAT, right? That allowed any connection that that it didn't know where it was going, essentially, to NAT using that ETH0. So your interface's names are obviously going to differ, right, according to whatever versions, but that should be it. So let's go over to our Windows 7 machine though, and let's make sure that we have internet connectivity there. So if everything is working right, we should be able to go to Google. Awesome. So let's do the ultimate test, and let's see if we can get to the local FortiGate on our remote side. So just once again, I am right here. Alright, I'm going to see if I can't connect to that interface right there. So here we go. Alright, 10.200.1.1. Okay, and lo and behold, there is our local FortiGate. So there you guys go. Not only was this an example of how to set up a single FortiGate in this VMware, we set up two of them, including a Linux box in the middle that essentially will pass traffic through to different subnets and then also NAT out the real internet as we need it. So what can you do with this topology? You can build up VPN tunnels. You can add additional interfaces if you guys want to create those redundant WAN links like we had in class. All you'd have to do is add more interfaces to each one of these virtual machines, and then also two more for the NATed device here. You could throw in a third device and practice your routing if you guys want to practice dynamic routing. There's a lot of good options that you can do with just these settings. So once everything is working though, the very last thing, I know this video has gone over way too long, I'll try to trim it up a little bit before I send it out. But if you have your FortiGates working exactly the way you like it, heck, even your Linux box, snapshot them. So especially the FortiGates here. So I'm just going to go to right click, I'm going to go to snapshot, take a snapshot, and I'm just going to call this initial configuration. So that way, as you're playing around and you lose connectivity or you accidentally name an interface wrongly, you can at least get back to its default settings. So initial configuration. So each one of your FortiGates will have at least that snapshot on there for it. Alright guys, that's all I have for you for right now. Good luck with everything. Let me know. I can always re-record this video. Like I said, I was kind of not feeling well over the weekend, recovering from last week. But feel free to email me back, give me my 2 cents if you need me to do something differently. And like I said, I'll try to clean it up a little bit before I send it out. But that is essentially it. As a review, what we did here was from video 2, we added an additional FortiGates. Alright. We also added an additional Windows 7 machine and an additional CentOS box. Alright, and then we went ahead and built up a topology. You're going to need some kind of guide, and we created each LAN segment for each one of the switches that devices are going to plug into. So we did that through VMware, and then we powered everything on, and then we went ahead and we set the IP addresses, and they were able to talk. And then the very last thing that we did was load up the CentOS Xbox and make sure that we did the right interface names, right, for each one of these. And then we also briefly told it to forward IP packets. So that was important, so it can pass traffic. And then the very last command of the IP tables was essentially allowing it to do a little bit of NATing. And as you can see, we tested both sides, and we did get internet connectivity throughout both of them. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and just let me know what else I can do for you. So, alright, good luck, guys.